Good afternoon / evening. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. So let's start off with well, before we start off with the roll call, I'd just like to welcome Alan Beeler, newest member of the Planning Commission. We'll let you give a little intro after the roll call if you would like.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Eric Velchef not able to make it. Rhiannon Haller, present. Megan Winters, present. Alice Biscurt, present. Yeah. Alan Beeler.
Here.
All right, and then we also have Mike Tedesco and Jim Price from staff attending. Yeah, Alan, so feel free to give a quick intro if you'd like.
Sure. I'm Al Beeler. I live on South Grandview Avenue. I've been there 500 years or so. Probably right here. Actually, I was encouraged by my sister-in-law Alice to consider coming on the planning commission. He thought that my background might be helpful. I should also tell you that I was on the planning commission quite a long time ago, back when the planning commission was a joint commission between Thornburg and Roslyn Farms. So I've had a little bit of experience. My background, just so you folks know, is basically in the field of transportation, but also with planning. I worked with the city planning department of City of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County Planning Department. I was head of planning for the Port Authority of Allegheny County for a while, and then I had greater responsibilities, and eventually I became the head of engineering and construction of Port Authority. Incidentally, one of my projects was the West Busway, so you can kind of dates me a little bit. But I finally left Port Authority in 1996. I was asked to be the general manager, but I've been there too long, and I had another opportunity to work in Puerto Rico for a couple of years on a transit project, which was great fun. After that, I spent another 3 years back here in Pittsburgh working for a consulting firm. I was in charge of the preliminary engineering for the tunnel under the river, for starting, down at Gateway that went over to the stadium, and that was a pretty interesting project, needless to say. And so if you got 6 or 7 hours, you want to listen to that, I'll tell you about it. After that, I worked at the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation in Harrisburg. I still lived here, but commuted. And I was the secretary of the Department of Transportation for 8 years. And then after that, I was planning on retiring. That didn't go well. And I worked for Carnegie Mellon University. I was executive director of a special university transportation center project. And it was really a lot of fun because you got to not only work within the public policy group, but the engineering group, and also there was a good connection to something called the Remaking Cities Institute, which gave me more of a connection back into planning and stuff. Anyway, that's more than you want to know, but I have 2 cats too. There you go. Anyway, that's me, and if there's any questions anybody has, I'd be happy to tell you a little bit more about some detailed experiences, but hopefully I can be of value, and I'm happy to join these good folks as well. It's a pleasure. So thanks.
Cool. Welcome. Thanks, Al. I neglected to mention that Solicitor Mandy Colhane is also present. So, all right. So moving on to the approval of minutes from the last meeting, March 25th. I'll entertain a motion to approve unless there are any amendments to the minutes.
There is an amendment to the minutes, or at least one amendment. I was recalling, and I did not catch the last name of the individual, but it was Dave, who, when there was a discussion of what the approximate cost of surveying and so forth was, it offered his perspective as a surveyor and what the costs that he's familiar with were, and I just wanted to make sure that got in. If anybody knows his last name, my notes said Dave S., but I don't know. I have seen him surveying. We can find out, but does anyone know his last name? No? Okay, well, we'll find out what it is, but I wanted to make sure we got that entered into the minutes.
Got it.
And let's check one other thing. Yeah, I think it will come up in the agenda item relative to conservancy.
Got it.
Districts.
Okay.
So
All right.
hold it till then.
Thank you. Any other amendments to the minutes? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So move.
All right, any objections? Okay, hearing none, the minutes of the prior meeting are approved.
No, go ahead, Karen. Do you mind?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
First page. The first side, work from the bottom, I'm pretty sure that's your favorite.
Sure, now, yep. Oh,
Is the comment in there or just the name?
It has on the
Okay, I must have missed it when I read it.
Okay, so I guess for formality purpose, we're retracting that, motion and just the,
No, his comment about the.
oh,
Not in
gotcha.
there. The
It's
name
his
was
last
there about
name,
something
Davis.
else,
Okay,
right.
gotcha. All right.
Yes. that's
Okay.
what was-
Cool. All right, so they're all set.
Davis.
Okay, cool. All right, in that case, we'll move on to public comment. We do have one comment we received by email that I'm gonna read in for the record, and then, we'll move on to public comment on agenda items. All right, so this email is from, Steve, Crescenzo, unable to make the meeting. So he wanted to provide some additional info, about the April 2nd open house memo, which is included in the packet agenda item 8. So Steve says, regarding the first bullet on the aforementioned memo, I am providing additional soils information obtained from the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Services Web Soil Survey. The first attachment, entitled Soil Report South Grandview, provides an overview of the soil types located within the former conservancy designated parcels. Further information pertaining to the slip potential, which is identified as a high, and the suitability of the soil types for dwellings with and without basements, which are classified as very limited, are provided in the 3 other reports to the Gilpin, Weichert, Kalioka, Channery silt looms, GSF, Soli complex that exists within the majority of these parcels. Considering this provided information, the situation of these parcels and the landscape, and the lack of information that the Plan Commission has to the reasons behind the original designation of these parcels as conservancy designation, a more thorough consideration of the redesignation to neighborhood residential is warranted. In reference to the third bullet on the above referenced memo, consideration should be given to providing a discrete definition as to what situations constitute a reasonably necessary for the convenience or welfare of the public. Additional definition should be provided as to when and how the borough can enact their exemption. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you would like to discuss. Okay. Do we have the sign-in sheet?
0 people on the signage.
Okay, is there anyone on, we'll do, okay, go ahead, Greg.
Hi, Greg. Well,
How you doing?
I had just one follow-up on Steve's memo and was wondering if you guys will be addressing the memo. And I know that you had voted for that to be taken out of the conservancy district, but in light of more information, that are you going to reconsider that vote of last commission meeting?
It is a bullet point in the very last memo in the packet, so it will be up for discussion.
Thanks, Greg. All right, any other folks in person who would like to comment on any of the agenda items? And just as a reminder, general public comment is available at the end of the meeting. All right, anybody attending virtually on Zoom, if you could raise your hand if you would like to comment. Okay.
Nope.
Right, so it looks like only those 2 public comments then. So we will move on to agenda item number 5. Lot line revision application.
Okay, so this is going to require consideration from planning commission, a vote. We're gonna pull up a PowerPoint to give some context to the application. This application is pursuant to our chapter 197 subdivision and land development ordinance, which outlines the process for such things. The applicant who is here, Becky, if you can raise your hand, that is the applicant, is requesting to move a lot line, which I will show you momentarily, down on Ewing and DeSoto in the orange box. Thank you, Jim. Can you go back to the orange box, actually, just to orient everybody?
Yep.
We are the blue dot in the middle. You can see Serafino's. We're the blue dot right by there. So to get everybody oriented, down on Ewing, big green arrow. Roughly Ewing and DeSoto. Next slide. And here are the parcels. Specifically, the applicant owns the northerly parcel. The applicant's mother-in-law, I believe, owns the southerly parcel. And if you hit the button, Jim, the formal request is to move the parcel line southerly to accommodate a home and a detached garage on the site. And Jim, if you want to zoom to any one of the next 3 slides. Everybody, there's a reason why the agenda packet is so thick. You have the full application in your packets. As you know, the engineering report on the same subject came out on Friday afternoon. That was circulated as well. So it's important to note a couple of items before discussion. This is technically simply a lot line revision consideration process. This is not a consideration of whether or not the applicant can build a house. The home building process is a separate application, specifically a building permit. But because the house is so contextual to this application, we totally understand if there are questions regarding the house. And then gateways, well, let me actually back up a step. Staff has been working with the applicants for a number of months now. And then when they got really deep into their application process, we started meeting with them more formally. There was an initial application review, probably whenever this first came up on the agenda for Planning Commission. So a couple months ago now, there was an initial application review. They were missing some things on the application, so I responded back with the easy items that they were missing. They accommodated that naturally, and then they resubmitted. And there's a term in chapter 197 called administratively complete. Is the application deemed administratively complete by staff? And the answer is yes. So that triggers all the timing processes and consideration processes for Planning Commission and Borough Council. Should Planning Commission choose to approve the application and move it forward, then it goes forward to Borough Council, and we'll have this very same conversation at a future council meeting. Gateway Engineers is required, a licensed engineering firm is required to review the application in its entirety, looking for conformance with the code and looking for general best practices in engineering. And they did that, and it's a 3-page memo, as you can see. I'm really happy there's an engineer on Planning Commission now, because he can verify or discredit what I'm about to say. All of the recommendations that Gateway Engineers provided are, I would deem, insignificant and easy to modify. They're basically notes and some very minor revisions to these technical drawings that you see on the screen. So very easy to do, no major concerns from Gateway other than these minor revisions. So for your consideration this evening, the way you have 2 pathways. One is to approve the application packet on the conditions that they abide by the engineering recommendations, and therefore move it along to council. And then the applicant will go back and accommodate those recommendations, resubmit the technical drawings, and it moves along to council, however long that takes to happen. The alternative number 2 is to table this discussion until the revisions are incorporated, and we revisit it formally at that time. So I will pause there.
Madam Chairman, I would move that we approve the subdivision conditioned on them meeting Gateway's requirements, which are very simple. I see no reason to table it and make the applicant wait for what it looks like to me, just rudimentary little notes and so on. The only thing I questioned is, because I just didn't understand it, was one comment that Gateway made where they said that, they wanted to have the primary access onto such and such road, as if there's options. If I understand it though, if you look at the map, there's at the very top of the slope, it looks like a paper street, Grandview Avenue. And interesting, but it's a funny comment to me, because they plan on, having a driveway onto Ewing. It's more of an engineering issue. It's not really a planning commission issue as far as that, but just FYI. So I'm sure that's sort of a no-brainer.
I would second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, all right, so any further, so that wasn't an approval, that was or I guess that was a motion to approve, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was-
Okay,
That was very efficient.
cool. All right, so then we'll move on to agenda item number 6, Business Development Committee update. Megan and or AJ.
We've met twice so far, so we met most recently on April 15th. I'm sorry.
I only know because they tell me they can't hear me.
Yes.
So I'm just repeating.
Thank you. We have met twice so far. We met most recently on April 15th. The business owners on the subcommittee, met with Mike most recently to provide input on the multimodal grant that we received that's, included in the memo that's in our packets. Business owners are working alongside residents to identify some good examples of welcome packets for, new businesses coming into the community or established businesses. They're also working and hoping to host a mixer for area business owners and commercial property owners sometime in June. And that's also coinciding with the borough finalizing their business directory on our website. I think that requires some council approval. So at some point, we're hoping for that to be June, because at that mixer, we're hoping to provide or to create a branded window cling to promote our business directory at our local businesses that business owners around can display in their windows.
Yep.
Anything to add to that, anything?
We'll need funding for that, which is what you
Yes.
referenced. So we'll need some funding for that. We have a design already underway that uses the current logo with a shopping tagline.
Cool.
And one of our committee members, Logan Drew, and Mike, you're on the committee, was very instrumental in helping us get to the business directory with
Yes.
more data so that we're have a jump start. And then we have an intern coming in, right? Is that?
Couple
You
weeks.
can give us the
May.
update on that to do. a couple
Who's going to be
projects.
facilitating a lot of these projects, particularly the commercial, right, the commercial property owner sort of directory, so that we
Yes.
can better direct folks to them.
Would there be for all properties, all commercial? And-
I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
To understand the space that's available in Crafton.
Yeah.
And we're hoping for that to be done in May, so we could potentially invite those commercial property owners to a mixer in June.
And then we have, we also have suggested activities for post-June work because this committee is going through September. So hopefully if we can move efficiently through June or July, we will still have time working with the existing committee to explore some of the other ideas that they came up with. That we would want to implement, like getting then more individualized people following up to the mixer, things such as that.
Anyone have any questions?
And our next meeting will be in a few weeks, right?
Yep, I just sent out that doodle poll this evening.
All right, well, thanks for the update. So we'll move on to agenda item 7, BCED improvement priorities discussion.
Edge browser, it's the PDF. There we go, and scroll all the way past the applications way down there.
Oh, the BCD
Yeah,
stuff.
that's here.
Yeah.
There we go, start on first page. Up one, there we go.
Okay, as everybody, I believe, is aware, the borough was awarded $325,000 from the State Department of Community and Economic Development for aesthetic improvements downtown, otherwise known as the State Multimodal Grant, not to be confused with PennDOT's multimodal grant. We applied for 3 million, and within that application, we defined a downtown area that included Oh, you gotta share the screen.
Yep, that's what I'm working on.
We defined a downtown area that included all of the missing pieces that you see in this kind of bubble map here, so up Noble and just capturing more of what is functionally downtown Crafton. But because of the budget constraints for $325,000 after a number of conversations, particularly with the Infrastructure Council's Infrastructure Committee, these kind of hazy bubbles that you see seem to make the most sense to apply the money toward for these aesthetic improvements. So if you scroll down to the next, and here is the itemized list of possible aesthetic improvements that was actually outlined within the grant itself. Now, we're bound to this list, not so to speak, we are bound to this list. The question is, how do we prioritize the list? And that's the discussion that I want to bring to you. The rest of the memo, if you just kind of slowly scroll through it, just so we can see examples. These are just examples. So trash cans are like $750. Bike racks are like $500, more for custom. We're talking about sidewalk planters, which is a tricky conversation because of maintenance, but it's $400 plus some money for soil. Decorative lighting is probably the biggest ticket item, roughly 7,000, but there's a lot of variance on that number. And then of course the installation expense. And then everybody's favorite string lights, which are very affordable. So those are just picture samples. That's the end. So if you go back up to the list.
Yep.
Just, some very simplified examples of cost estimates and the aesthetics of these specific things that we get to buy with this money. Conversations about where do we put these things. Megan, thank you for citing the conversation I had with local business owners, I believe a week ago, last Monday, regarding this list. We really started talking about planters and what that means for maintenance. I haven't had this deep dive discussion with Jim yet, but obviously there's concern about public works capacity to maintain planters and water them. That takes time, particularly in high summer. Sidewalk planters are a tricky thing that is a little more of a deeper discussion, but still a very simple discussion to have. You guys get to do some shopping to a degree and prioritize what you really like, and then I'll take that back to council and the infrastructure committee, and we can continue the conversation. I'll stop there.
And your timeline for that?
There's no set timeline. We would love to install these things. I'll put it in.
Timeline for prioritization.
Yeah. Oh, timeline for prioritizing. No specific timeline. We want to start putting things in the ground next spring. That'll give us winter to procure, get contractors, get all that lined up. So, aiming toward fall to get this all finalized, I'd say.
Was there any further input from the residents that, or from the business owners that you talked to, other than
They're
already read?
Yeah, they're very excited. They want to see some stuff on the sidewalks. Yeah, for sure.
Do you have a report at all of what, or just a report back of what all they talked about, planters?
Yeah.
And in our meeting, they talked a lot about lights, bike racks in front of big trees, trash cans.
Yeah.
And I would offer that, yes, aesthetics is the driver here because it's decorative street lighting and so forth, but there's functionality to the need for bike racks and for trash cans in the central business district. It's less of an aesthetic and more of a, we get to pick something, but it's a necessity from their perspective. They're out there cleaning up the sidewalks and.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, there was nothing that they hated. If they did prioritize a bit and put wayfinding kind of toward the bottom as
interesting.
far as priorities go. But they're excited about all of these possibilities.
Regarding things like bike racks, I'm looking at half the audience here who's on the trail committee, and I'm just wondering, maybe we could bring it up with the guy who's the consultant that we're gonna be talking to here next week, I guess it is.
On Monday.
On Monday.
Yeah, maybe they have some ideas, I sure echo your comment about maintenance, whether it's the planters or whether it's the lights, whether it's a bike stand, whatever the heck it is. It would be really good to have just sort of a quick overview from the maintenance folks. You guys and Jim and I say as to which things really, what what issues are brought with these different things. I mean,
Yeah.
the lights. I'm not looking at the string lights, I'm looking at the street lights elements. I mean, they look lovely. Do certain ones have more baggage than others in terms of maintenance? I'm just sensitive that from the old job I had at PennDOT, you know, it's maintenance is sort of everything. If you can't maintain it, no shame on you, you know, you should not really pick it, so. But in terms of location, that's pretty tough. Because, you know. I'm not sure you make it through, other than having, you know, more input from the business folks. To say, would everybody want these things? Well, okay, then is there, I think the question is prioritization kind of issues, would it really make a difference? In terms of planters, you know, you can see some of those down on Penn Avenue in the city. And I've seen them in Seattle and a couple other places who are, you know, just trying to sort of recapture the streetscape stuff, right? What I see here, except maybe along Crafton Boulevard where the fig tree is so narrow that there's not much left, you know? You got disability access issues and on and on and on. So maybe our options are fewer for that. And then if the planners really are a headache in terms of maintenance, then I would look at other things, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the biggest priority should be anything that also contributes to pedestrian safety. So like I see, you know, creating a safer circle intersection with a new painting on here, because one of the main things that comes up with why people live in Crafton, why they move to Crafton, they really like the walkability, and, you know, lots of kids walk to school. And when you have the crossing guards out, it's easy to cross the street, but when the crossing guards aren't there, people either don't know or just don't care about the fact that if you're in a crosswalk, like, you're not supposed to hit someone. And so the circle is like definitely an area where I've noticed that so, you know, we have lots of people who like take the bus to work or school or other activities. So I think that should definitely be a priority, because ultimately, like, if you want people to enjoy the streetscape, you need to make it easy for them to like use the sidewalks, and that involves feeling safe and not worrying about getting hit by a car. And I think there are probably some creative ways that you can like use things like planters, and like, even if you're not narrowing the street, if you have things like trash cans, sidewalk planters, like closer to the street, it is a natural kind of, it can be almost a natural traffic calming thing, because people are like, you're looking at the lights, you're looking at the trash cans. I mean, you should be focusing on the road too, but maybe you're not looking at the trash cans. But yeah, so I think, yeah, any way we can increase pedestrian safety in Crafton is going to be a win, and more people walking creates more foot traffic for businesses.
A native species planting ground.
Perhaps it could be. I would also add the bicycle infrastructure, because that came up a lot for the business owners in the conversation. And I think, you know, pedestrian and infrastructure being safe, and I think we could even expand that to just mobility, kind of as a sort of priority, safety and mobility.
Were they supportive of bicycle amenity?
Yeah, Fig Tree
Oh,
folks
good.
really wanted them in front of their, you know, right in front of their business, so that
Yeah, I
was
think generally people were
very,
Yeah, great.
very favorable.
yeah,
for
very
bike.
favorable.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they would like to see more, and
I think that's a good opportunity between that and trash cans to have a sort of cohesive branding of things. If you have those, you know, throughout the intersections that are identified in the grant, that creates the sort of cohesiveness that people are talking about, wanting to connect from each place to another.
Yeah, good comments.
I think for now, I would also be lower on the wayfinding sign at the busway until we have more wayfind. So we get a few more things out there, it may have to be a little more substantive of an investment, would be my thought on that. I also, which won't be a surprise to some of you, would be supportive, because my understanding of the budget is there's not that much set aside for designing the circle. And it does need to be evaluated so that we're not covering a statue dedicated to a person there for majority of months of the year, and also that it presents the right type of the right aesthetic appeal. I mean, and we have to, we should take a look at that certainly, but I would think that just cleaning it up a bit and maintaining that, when things are blooming, it looks great, but when they're not, you have a lot of things there that would be better placed in a park, for instance, than in a circular traffic circle. So that would be I would see if we could add that.
Gotcha.
No, but we can say like, we welcome the comments, general public comment.
Yeah.
Any other like discussion from planning commission members on this?
But the only question I have, is this what you wanted from us?
Yeah, no, this is good.
This
I mean,
is
all
sufficient
feedback
for
is
what
good
you
feedback.
wanted.
Yes, yes.
We haven't looked at numbers, we haven't looked at the backup and the detail and the prioritization, and that supposedly will
Right.
either be with the council, not us, or.
In all likelihood, it'll be Larry in the office being the one guy behind a computer doing a CAD program, putting these dots on a map of downtown. So that'll be an initial first take down the road a little bit.
Do you think you have enough feedback between this conversation and the one you had with business owners for him to sort of plot up some possibilities that reflect the grant amount and these, items about what they're, what we would go with? Because it seems like we know we want trash cans, we know we want the bike racks, planners are still knowing about maintenance of all of the things included. But I think it's difficult to kind of piece it all together, and I think I would ask to kind of put it onto staff to propose a sort of map of what we could do with it.
Yeah.
If that is okay.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. For sure.
Yeah, and there's also the additional, we are attempting to move a grant that we have additional money for. I think we talked about the LSA process. So there's
Define LSA, I'm sorry.
local share account. It's a grant from the state that we got for part of the Crafton Boulevard project, but we haven't gotten the remaining funding for the Crafton Boulevard project. So there's $120,000, part of which is one thing we'll have to do is an EV charger as part of that grant. That would be in the school parking lot, but we are waiting to hear back from the state whether we can move some of that funding to this project. So that will increase the amount that we could send by about $100,000 probably on this project. So that would allow us to do a little more and we can play around with it. And I think that's a great example. Like we can take these numbers and put more concretely, put them on paper and see what they would look like and see how many lights you could actually get and kind of get a couple of different options, and then we can talk about it again at a future meeting. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that'd be great.
And I would definitely encourage folks to speak up about, what you think about these ideas during the general public comment section if, this got your creative juices flowing. So if you came here, weren't sure what to say, this is a great thing. We'd love to hear your feedback on. All right, well, in that case, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, zoning discussion.
Okay, where to begin? Very last memo in your packets. So very last page for those in the audience that have the big packets. It's just a one pager. Most, if not all, of you were attended on April 2nd, the open house. What's reflected below are all of the comments that were written down for staff to bring to you from that meeting. 43 people signed into it. And what I'm figuring is we can just talk through each bullet point. Mandy is prepped for this conversation as well. And in fact, I bet she's in a better position to answer some of these questions than me. So, Madam Chairwoman, if we can just walk through each bullet, that'd be great.
Well, I'd like to get the planning commission's feedback on something. So I know some of these are like informational, just kind of questions, and this did go out to the public. So I want to be conscious of everyone's time. So I'm wondering if instead of focusing on just like, people's questions that are just like asking for information, when people have more like suggestions.
This memo here. This one,
The
very last.
second memo.
Yeah,
Oh,
that-
you're not
with
talking
the
about
5
that
bullet
first
points.
one. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the same
I thought you
thing.
were, I thought you were asking me to go through.
I'm
It was
sorry.
in, it was.
Okay, I thought you were asking me to go through all these questions and I'm like,
Very last-
oh,
Very last page,
Item.
yeah.
okay, cool. All right.
5 easy bullets, not all of them.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll read each one off and then I guess, Mandy, if you can, chime in on as appropriate. Okay. All right. So first suggestion is consider switching the 11 parcels on Grandview that were originally conservancy, then switch to neighborhood residential, back to conservancy due to soil conditions on the back sides of the parcels that are more likely to be unstable. And I'll just note here that, Steve's comment that was read in to the meeting pertains to this as well.
Yes.
So Jim, if you can circle those parcels with your mouse,
Yep.
those green ones right there next to the orange.
And one thing is incorrect. They were actually switched to community residential, not neighborhood residential. Because there are several multi-units on that street,
Thank you.
including a 4-unit, a 3-unit and a 2-unit.
Thank you. So I would, I'll just start some discussion on that if we can. We did not get Steve's information in time to go through it in great detail, but I did look through the 3 reference documents that he had attached. Also at the last meeting, I was hesitant to vote in favor because I felt like I needed more information, but I didn't speak up at the time. So I appreciated the information that Steve, and I didn't because I wanted to, I was trusting the information I was hearing, but I felt like I wanted a little more information. And as Eric said at the meeting, we can revisit it. So I'm glad that Steve brought this information forward for us to revisit. I saw that I would like to open it up and revisit it again. I saw that from what I read, that there would be reason to not move forward with it. Having said that, not everybody may have had a chance to read the documents and have an opinion at this point.
I've read the documents. I mean, basically, it's going through a long dissertation about soil conditions. And understand, so the recommendation was previously it was zoned basically as a slope.
Conservancy.
Same thing as conservancy now.
Yep.
And now it's recommended to be CR, right?
Correct.
And so, and so the request was to make it neighborhood.
Make it
Back
conservancy
to
again,
conservancy.
back
Make
to
it con-
conservancy because of the
Steve
slope.
recommended
Correct.
making it conservancy.
It was conservancy to begin.
Yeah,
and
even
then-
with it, yeah.
And then we changed it.
He was opposed to neighborhood residential. Or community residential.
All right, I didn't understand that, okay.
Yeah.
And when we spoke, Alan, just so we're clear, I mistakenly called it neighborhood residential.
it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but the logic to make it. Conservancy is because of the soil condition,
Correct.
or what? What,
Yes,
so the request is based on soil condition. Which I thought that long dissertation about the soil analysis was related to that it could be developable. Did I misunderstand that?
No, what that says is that where there are 25 to 80% slopes on that property, it is prone to slide.
I totally agree with that.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the, in the draft code. It talks more about slope issues.
Yep.
And those difficulties as opposed to soil. Soil is one of the things,
Right.
but mostly it's slope. In that case, I think that makes sense.
Yep, well, just one thing to note, that slope, right, this does not change. Where you can build, whether it's conservancy or not. My concern with switching it back to conservancy is you already have buildings on every one of those lots.
That's true.
And you have several that are multi-unit, which means that they will not be able to be refurbished in any considerable way or rebuilt if they are not, if they for some reason fall into disrepair. It'll be more difficult for those multi-units to be repaired. You can build a house on any lot in the borough, and the part where the slopes are beyond where the buildings are. So there's not much difference between having it be conservancy. From the slope perspective, there's almost no difference because the code requires that on any slope that's greater than 25% is not allowed to be built on in any district.
So
Um,
this is like that, right?
It's
Yeah.
essentially like that, and I don't have I should have printed up the contour lines. But where those houses are is basically flat or very close to flat. It drops off right behind the houses. Or actually behind the garages. One garage at the very end of the street is on a slight slope. But for the most part, the yards are even go a little bit out from the house. But that is the riskiest. This is the only part in the borough that is listed on Allegheny County's potential landslide area.
Yeah.
So there is landslide potential, but I'm not sure what changing it from conservancy to functionally does. So
I'll just raise what I thought I heard citizens saying about that, and that is that if it is not conservancy, there's nothing to prevent someone from trying to build. And the
Yes, there is.
conditions may,
yes, there
the
is.
conditions may prevent that. So that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that and make sure, because I
Yeah.
think that was the concern.
Did we get any feedback from residents in those impacted parcels between when we switched?
I haven't received any time of you have.
Okay, I can remember a comment from someone, wanting to keep them in the conservancy, but I don't think that it was someone who lived in those parcels. If I
Yeah, I think there was a request from one of the other areas.
Mhm.
So just to start again. So it is already today conservancy, basically. I mean, it's slow.
In the current,
When I think this is accurate, I drove down there today just to double check. What I recall was at the very end, at Crafton Boulevard, there's a multi-unit facility. Then I think partway through the block, I think there's just one other structure that's multi-unit, and then the one at the very end, on the other end, is also.
Yeah, I think there were 3 multi-units on the
Three?
street.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Both ends and one in the middle.
Yep.
All the rest, basically, it looks like single-family houses from just a quick drive-through.
Yep.
So go back to the question about, care a lot about somebody who owns that property and has to deal with it now. So they've got so the back wall now has got, has a cave-in issue going on. So what's the difference if it was conservancy versus, say, CR? In terms of what they can do to,
If you're doing more than 50% reconstruction of a building,
gotcha,
that essentially means you have to match the zoning rules that are currently there. And if that's the case, they would not be able to rebuild those multi-units
yeah,
because they're in conservancy. Now, they currently are now. So
yeah,
they might have bought those buildings with that knowledge. So
yeah.
that is quite possible
Yeah,
that
I mean,
they're not concerned.
You don't buy a house without looking at the
Yeah.
backyard.
Yeah, yep.
Do you have any knowledge of any kind of subsidence issues that folks have had to deal with there?
I
wouldn't have any
don't, but there have been landslides in the other, if you look at there has been landslides in other areas over here.
Yeah,
So landslides, it definitely is a slope, a prone area. So if we want to prevent it from, the only thing, you can't knock them down, basically, it's a very long planning process. So if you would like those multi-units to eventually go away, leave it as conservancy, eventually, if they're not repaired or if they ever fall into disrepair, then they wouldn't be able to be rebuilt. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of difference between conservancy and community residential.
it's a sort of a, that's 22. I mean, it's sort of 601 kind of.
Yeah,
There are other properties within the conservancy where people reside, correct?
oh yeah,
yeah.
every parcel, all 11 of those parcels have houses
Right.
on them.
Yeah.
And 3 of them are multi-units and they're rented. From my
One more
understanding.
time, just because my brain isn't working there.
That's all right.
So if I've got a problem, I gotta fix my house. Easier under conservancy or easier under CR?
Oh, easier under CR, but only if it's a multi-unit. And only if it requires more, a significant repair,
Yeah.
meaning more than 50% repair. Basically, full reconstruction or rebuild. So it's really rare. It wouldn't be a very common thing.
Yeah.
But that is the difference.
And the request from Steve was basically saying, because it's slide prone, we should just make it conservancy.
Correct.
We're kind of like sitting with this right now is, it seems like there's not really a huge difference either way. But we've had, you know, a very strong request from a resident and some other, you know, people have made comments too to keep it conservancy. So, like where I'm leaning right now is go with the public input because it doesn't seem like there's a huge risk. Like, yeah, there's a small risk, but there's not a huge one. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, rebuilding 50% of it seems like something I'm not. It's hard for me at the moment with the information I have to delineate how the folks in these parcels would be different from the folks in the conservancy parcels nearby substantially. So, I would be also inclined to keep it to revert it back into conservancy.
Okay, just to start the ball rolling, I would move that we accept the residents' recommendation to keep it conservancy.
To revert it.
Well, to change it,
It's to keep
change it back to
it's to keep it.
conservancy.
In
In
other
the
words, we
proposed
have,
plan.
right, in the proposal that goes to the
proposal
borough,
is
keep it
CR,
as
to
is.
change it back to conservancy.
Yes.
It's,
Okay.
these guys know what we mean.
Yes, absolutely,
So-
yes. It will
So
be-
nobody has
In the
approved it
proposed
yet.
plan,
This is
it'll
only
be
what
a
we're forwarding.
Right,
to
right,
them.
right.
So
Oh,
all
sure,
we're saying is we're gonna keep with the current.
Right.
Correct. I'll second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so, motion passes. All right, so moving on to the second bullet, is it possible to define and provide regulations on medium-term rentals, e.g. traveling nurses and traveling contractors? Short-term rentals, including Airbnbs, are defined as being less than 30 days of occupancy and are restricted to our commercial districts. What can we do to reduce the nuisance impact, parking, noise, ill-maintained properties of medium-term rentals?
So Mandy and I discussed this. The answer is you
I
absolutely.
think Mandy was gonna say something.
Oh, good. Mandy, why don't you go ahead, take this? That's perfect.
Oh, sure. So there's a couple of things you could do here. My thought was the easiest and most simple way to address it would be to expand the definition of short-term rental to include stays longer than 30 days. I started thinking about carving out a separate definition, but I think our restrictions would be similar. We'd want people to register. We'd want to limit how long they can how many people can be there, how long it can be used. So one suggestion that's really easy is just to increase that 30 days to something more, 60, 90. I think the proposed ordinance limits how long you can use your home as a short-term rental to 25% of the year anyway. So if I'm doing the math right, nobody could use theirs for more than 90 days out of the year anyway. So that was one option. Other places have done different regulations for medium-term rentals, but that would potentially require a separate ordinance, not just zoning. But you know, our recommendation would be just to increase that 30 days to something more, and then those properties would be subject to the same short-term rental restrictions.
Quick question, Mandy. So the current properties in residential areas, if this change were to take effect, those would come into the zoning code as illegal uses or non-conforming uses?
And we did talk about this. If they are permitted now and will no longer be permitted, they will be considered legal non-conforming uses. So they
Got
would have to register. They could continue as short-term rentals, but they cannot be abandoned, increased, or anything like that. They'd be subject to all the non-conforming use regulations.
Got it. Thank you.
Any discussion from the planning commission on this?
I'm still trying to see where we have medium-term rentals, because I'm not remembering
Oh, we don't have that
Yeah.
in it.
their request to make medium-term rentals.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was gonna say, I don't recall us having those, and I recall us
Yeah.
having.
If we don't mention medium-term rentals at all, they're illegal everywhere unless somebody can come in and request that they be permitted to have a medium-term rental because it's similar enough to a short-term rental.
If I heard you correctly, Mandy, it seems like your recommendation is to address this comment, we could simply increase 30 days to something else, and then we would address medium term. So maybe like not define it separately, but just have an increase in time.
I
Okay.
think the easiest thing to do is, yeah, increase that 30 days to something more. And that would capture those medium-term rentals.
I feel like I want to go back and read the notes from how we got here in the first place. That would be my suggestion. Rather than just go for this because someone asked it and automatically extend it. So, that would be, my motion would be that we don't act on this right now, but that we go back and review public comment and see what got us here. And have some discussion about that and get some input on that.
There was just one other comment, there was a second part of that. Issue that says on one hand, it is possible to have medium term rentals, and then it talks about how do you reduce the nuisance of them. So,
Yeah.
so. I don't know that.
I think regulating them allows you to do that if they're included in the definition of this transient short-term rental, they have to register with the borough. And so you will know what you should know about them and can keep an eye on it to make sure the properties are being maintained.
And I would also say, having rented a house full with 16 people on a big place, we only had 3 parking spots for 3 cars.
Yeah.
And that was all we were allowed to have, and that was clearly enforced to us as renters. So those kinds of things do exist to regulate parking.
So yeah, there is a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
A second, sure.
Yeah, do we need to motion or are these all?
Yeah,
Could we just?
Yeah, I don't
table?
think we need to take any formal action if we're not ready to make a decision on this tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mandy, could you repeat that? I didn't hear
Oh,
you.
I was saying, I don't think we need to take any formal action via motion if we're not ready to make any decisions on this issue tonight.
Let me just have one other suggestion about this. If
Because I don't want to.
if we would consider medium term rentals. It might be interesting, Mandy, if it's possible to create some language that says, here's an example of, or here's the language that might go along with medium term rentals, and then also. The requirement to deal with the things that were described in this note as nuisance, which is parking and so on. So it might be interesting to see what that language might look like, so you have something more concrete to act on or reject.
Yeah, I can definitely provide that, some examples of the 2 different ways to approach this. And as you know, with parking and noise and ill-maintained properties, there's always neighbors to report things like that too.
Okay, you guys?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, so we'll revisit this in the next planning commission meeting.
I also want to bring one other thing up that
Sure.
I see might have been a mistake in one of the changes that happened over the course of the last few months. And that is when this draft was initially brought, they had the section for transient housing in the back, with the asterisk, the supplemental regulations, was for the neighborhood and community residential, and then it got removed from those 2 districts, which is, great, because then it won't bother those people. But when it was in, which it's only in mixed use and central business district now,
Okay, that's
or CTOD,
right.
and those had no restrictions, because we currently have at least 2 Airbnbs that are fully operational in the central business district all year round. As full houses. So I would hate for those, and they're good. I mean, they bring people into the borough all the time, and which people that go to businesses. And they're not next to houses, they're next to other businesses. So they fit, they are much better. I would just be concerned that we go back and follow the paper trail and make sure that that didn't get changed incorrectly, because I think they were permitted by right initially without that asterisk. Now we could add an asterisk back in, but I would hate to limit it to 25% of the year, because 2 of those properties are full-time rented all year
Right.
round.
Well, maybe it's really a non-issue.
Right. if it's-
Yeah,
Commercial.
because they're in commercial districts.
Right,
Yeah,
so it's not a harmful.
right. It's not gonna be like your
CR,
neighbor,
NR, or whatever.
right, it's not gonna be like your neighbor throwing a party. In fact, they were completely eliminated from those districts.
I wonder if.
So I just want to
made
make sure that we
suggestions,
track that
Does
correctly.
that person know that? I wonder.
What's that?
Whoever made this,
No, it was it probably happened in the course of the conversation, so we'll go back and track.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll go back and track the documents and see when it got changed.
So I mean, if someone had made that suggestion, it might be useful to get back to them personally and say, were you aware that that's what was the current situation?
Yeah, I don't,
Not
yeah.
in harmful district.
They're here, by the way. I spoke with them at April 2nd
Okay.
during that conversation.
Okay.
And the tricky part is the 30-day thing. If they have neighbors who are nurses, contractors who are traveling,
Sure,
and it's
sure.
kind of a mess for the
Okay.
streets.
All right, good discussion, thanks. Okay, so moving on to the third item, section 22511, buildings exempt from regulations. Is there a way to refine the wording to make the exemption specific to emergencies? So the exemption is this chapter shall not apply to any building of the borough or extension thereof, or to the use of any premises by the borough. The borough council shall decide during a public meeting that such building or extension thereof, or such use of any premises is reasonably necessary for the convenience or welfare of the public.
Yeah, I took a look at this. There are some zoning codes throughout Pennsylvania that have this language. But it's a minority. The majority have the language that's currently in the code, and that is only with respect to public utility properties. The MPC, the only exception in the MPC is for public utilities. So that's why most zoning codes just adopt that exemption for public utilities only. So unless there's some strong need for this kind of language, our recommendation would be just to keep the current language that exempts only public utilities.
Any discussion on that? I could entertain a motion to follow Mandy's recommendation,
I would second that.
or I would, sorry, entertain a motion.
Okay, sorry, yes, I'll make a motion to honor Mandy's suggestion.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
It's
Aye. Okay, none opposed.
an item that goes before council anyhow, right?
Yes,
Yeah, all of it
exactly.
goes before
Yeah.
council.
In council, we have preserved the right to council to have more flexibility to deal with unforeseen conditions, it seems. And it becomes a public issue anyway, so.
Right.
It seems like I think keeping it makes more sense to me to give the council that flexibility.
Good. Thank you.
All right, the next item is change the Linden properties, school district and borough properties from community residential to active park. Jim, would you mind pulling up the map just so?
Is it in this document that I'm in?
Yeah. It's also in the PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, it might not be.
Just like the zoning, yeah. So yeah, Mike, did you have a,
Yeah, I'm gonna yield to Jim on
Okay.
this one.
gotcha,
Council has asked that we leave this how it is for now. As they have discussions with the school board, that might have to change anyway. So it's really kind of a moot point what this ends up being. But that's the thoughts from council.
yeah.
Or mute, as some of my residents would say.
Moot.
Can't hear.
Here is it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, would we be at like risk of a lawsuit if we were changing zoning designations while there was currently a property transaction like under discussion or?
Well, there's no transaction and discussion.
Okay,
it's
gotcha.
Not that far along.
Okay,
No, it's nothing like that.
okay.
Would that constitute down zoning? Today it's what, C2?
It's R2, R2.
So.
That
R2
would-
the park?
Yeah.
Does someone then have a claim against the borough to say you eliminated my right to develop this property?
The school district could make that claim. I mean, we are the borough, so we probably couldn't claim that against ourselves, but because we own part of the property and the school district owns the other part of the property. So the school district could make that claim, I guess, I suppose.
In general,
And they are interested in selling, so
right.
that is,
My reaction
that
to
is
that is
present.
you ought to wait to see what the opportunities are.
Yep.
An active park might ultimately be the answer, but you may want to see what's being proposed to see if that's a better. If that has a better overall impact to the community. So, I don't know, I would say don't change.
I agree.
I mean, I guess if the borough owns it, and as planning commission, we're making a recommendation, council has to ultimately approve, like. So if we're gonna make a recommendation that we know they're gonna change, it seems kind of,
Right.
yeah.
This seems like a bigger
Yeah.
decision to
Right.
make
Okay.
than just a simple bullet point in
Yeah.
this conversation.
Right.
So I would suggest that we table this
Okay,
definitely at the moment, or
Good
at
way
least
to put it.
table.
Good way.
okay. All right, so we'll move on to the last item here then, consider a Thomas Street overlay to remediate the non-conforming lot size challenge.
Okay. Mandy, you want to take this?
Yeah, yeah, overlays are usually used for, more recently, we've seen a lot of overlay districts for oil and gas development to allow it, but impose further restrictions to protect the community. You guys had a business district, an overlay business district at one point to encourage, new businesses. We see them for other conservation reasons. So it doesn't quite match. It's like apples and oranges, and how I view it is it's just like creating a separate zoning district for this one street. And from a legal perspective, I don't think the area impacted is big enough to make an overlay district make sense.
And there was a suggestion at the April 2nd from staff to change that, and that's why it's marked in the color it is, to change that to CR. Because that would allow for attached dwellings, which they all are. They are all single family attached dwellings. So it would bring them closest to compliance. The only thing that would not be 100% compliant would be the size of the lot, but there are a lot of other lots in the borough that are not compliant based on that. So it would follow basically the rest of the borough to leave it or to move it into CR, which would allow for single family attached housing.
So it'd be. Potential, this little gray strip is now CR, is what you're saying.
No, it is currently, well, we haven't I don't know that we've relabeled it. I think it was listed as, it was
It's
listed as
currently
mixed
R2.
use. It would, no, currently it's R2, but in the last draft of this, it was mixed use because it was moved into the business district.
Okay.
They have requested.
I'm looking at this map and it simply shows that gray thing. It says C.
Yeah, right. So, but in the last official proposed map, it was mixed
I
use.
see.
And the last request was from the residents, asked that we move it back into residential. So the residential that makes the most sense would be CR, because that would match it most closely, the community residential. Because that would allow for single family attached, which the neighborhood residential does not allow for.
And the reason why this discussion is coming to you, because planning commission has never taken a vote on this topic specifically.
So what was staff's recommendation?
CR makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Even though it's a little strip by itself.
Yeah.
I don't have an objection.
Because we sent letters to residents at the request of the public, and they asked to remain residential. As opposed to what was.
Except CR then.
Yeah, as opposed to what was recommended at that point.
I would second we move them to CR.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I mean, it's a bit of an anomaly. If you go through the neighborhood, first of all, it's an interesting little neighborhood.
It is.
It's a quiet little place, and if you go on both Thomas and Norma, I mean.
Yeah.
It's an interesting just little place, even though it's got scattered other kind of development there.
Yep.
It sort of works for them, is kind of my reaction.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
That helps them, that's great.
Good, so that wraps up the zoning discussion. Moving on to number 9, new business. Is there any new business? Not from staff, planning commission members. Okay, all right, so now we'll move into general public comment. So this is, public comment about anything, doesn't have to be on the agenda.
Planning.
Well, yeah, anything planning commission related. Yeah, and just as a reminder, 3-minute time limit. You don't have to say your address out loud. All right, so anyone in the room? Yeah, Linda?
You put the battery in it? It's a.
From the Wozniak 1773 bar. I just wanted to confirm that the surveyor that you were referring to earlier. SUPERTZI, even though his comment was about another thing or the note in the meeting minutes. That was it.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks. Right, yes.
Hi, Laura Casey, 66 Lincoln Avenue. First of all, I want to apologize to AJ and Jim for my outburst at the council meeting. I had reached out to several of my neighbors who had never attended a meeting. I told them, as I was told, that it would be a facilitated question and answer meeting. Again, we were missing. Secondly, if you can please refrain from addressing any of my questions till I'm done speaking, since I only have 3 minutes. I would like to address the Meyer Middletown Fields, which to the best of my knowledge, that area is considered a floodplain and cannot be developed. And the slope behind South Grandview, which I believe had been changed to CR in its original conservancy designation, and also cannot be developed. Like a Jim, since you appear to be the decision makers and influencers in our community, not your community, I ask, have you experienced the beauty of the area by the ball fields? They are surrounded by trees, Chartiers Creek, abundant wildlife, including the American bald eagle, which flew over the fields last evening while I was attending a game there. How fortunate we are to have this space. I feel this entire area should be left as a green space to preserve it for the future of our entire community, the children and the wildlife. Could you give me one reason other than financial gain that these areas could ever be developed? You have said in the past, these areas could not be developed, so why not change the zoning to reflect that? Being a former business owner, excuse me, on East Crafton Avenue for over 30 years, I feel we need to focus on working with the existing businesses in the area and bringing in new business and providing them with better parking. Parking on East Crafton Avenue is horrible. Something must be done so people don't just drive by the businesses because there's nowhere to park. We would like those people to have a place to park so they can stop and shop, not just drive by the businesses in there. Thank you.
Can I ask a
Thanks,
question?
Linda. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Any- East Crafton Avenue, you're talking about where the fig tree is?
No.
No.
He's Crafton Kershaw.
Place. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Regarding the ball field, that's proposed as a passive park.
Correct.
To remain as a park. The ball field.
What about the rest of the area down there?
The other part is where I think where Duncan is,
Mhm.
which is proposed to be. Oh, no, I'm sorry, wants to be an active park, the ball field, and wants to be a passive park, which is where Duncan is, I think.
No, Duncan is
No.
conservancy. The rest of it is all conservancy.
Okay,
So it is,
I'm
it's
sorry, my
basically,
mistake.
Okay,
The-
I'm talking about the area where the borough maintenance.
Oh, that's,
All that whole area down there.
okay, that's proposed as industrial, I think.
yeah, the part that the borough owns is industrial.
So in other words, where the borough maintenance facility is?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean, Laura?
And everything else is conservancy?
I'll show you the map.
The whole, okay, I would like to see it
Yep.
because.
Yeah, we just
So-
voted on.
So if you're looking at the thing, so this is Duncan's area here. These are properties that are owned and These are properties that are owned and have houses on them, up on top of the hill. This is the rest of the area. That's all conservancy. The only part that's not conservancy is the part that the borough actually owns, which is this part right here. And that's left as industrial right now. And that's what it's zoned now.
and that's our
And that's what
only
it's been
industrial.
zoned.
Okay, that cannot be changed, that's the borough owns that property and that's gonna be kept as.
That's up to whoever is in charge of the borough. At any given time. So that's council's decision on whether the borough could decide to sell it, the borough could. We're currently building a new public works building down there, but otherwise, and then it's also in the parks master plan. To eventually develop that down there into more park space. But there's no concrete plan to do that because it's fairly expensive to do that.
So,
So Mike, can I have one more question or not?
Yeah, one more, yeah.
So from Saloni's Bakery down in that area,
Over here, yep.
okay, so are you telling me from there all the way to basically the Thornburg Bridge is conservancy?
Or park. From the Saloni's Bakery, the first 3 properties are owned by the borough. About half of them, about more than half of that's being used for the compost pile that they have down there and other supply piles that they have down there. And then the 2 public works buildings, there's the old one and the new one.
Okay,
And then beyond that, these were all marked residential currently in the current code.
okay.
We are suggesting they all be switched to conservancy because they're in the floodplain, making them harder to develop.
Okay,
And including the slopes on DeSoto right next to the properties down there. And then the rest of it is CIT Fields, which is marked as an active park. And then the light blue here is owned by the borough, and that's a passive park. Because
it's
in the
either park or
park,
conservancy, so I think
Right, it's
it
great.
protects what you're looking for, I think.
yeah,
okay.
Yep.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that that area is protected because it is beautiful. Okay,
I
thank you for
agree.
your time.
Thanks, Linda.
I didn't,
Thanks, Laura.
Laura.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura.
I'm sorry, I need to clarify. You said something on Middletown Field?
that's CIT Fields.
Yeah,
That's
CIT.
the
Oh,
baseball
I'm
field.
sorry. I didn't understand them. Okay, I didn't know the name.
Yep.
Thanks.
And just wanted to add to, you mentioned that these are still CR. I think they did just vote to move those back in the conservancy. So even these are gonna be in the conservancy
Yeah,
too.
the
That was the
branding.
vote we
So it'll be
just took.
full conservancy. the
Yeah,
whole plan.
good grant.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 4 for 4.
Yeah.
Any other public comment? Yeah, Justin?
Hey, Coach Justin Marks, 31 Oregon. Just want to say that I'm happy to hear that you got some input on Thomas Street, right? The folks that live down there, I think their input makes the most sense for the zoning. I hope the same considerations given for the Grandview properties. I was taking a look at the map while we were talking about it, and yeah, lots of single family homes and multi units. I think their input there would be great if it hasn't already been seen. So, and I also recommend the same for the Linden property. I know it's been a hot topic, the fields over by the park. There's quite a bit of history there and some relationships that need to be maintained between the borough and school district. I'm not sure changing the zoning, without some of their input would be the best idea for the relationship between the borough and the school board. Garbage cans, please, more of them. I've gotten plenty of feedback over the last couple of weeks, participating in cleanup day. I pulled probably 30 pounds of trash, right over here by the busway, so I don't know if there's something, I don't know the states of the property right there next to the busway, but whatever we can do to like prevent more trash piling up down by that storm drain would be wonderful. Yeah, that's it. More trash cans, please. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Yes, please.
Dan Sweeney, 25 Lincoln Avenue. Just a comment, we've already started with, landscaping and lighting up on Crafton Boulevard above the school, so if we're talking about decorative lighting, but also for safety reasons. I think it would make sense to continue what we've already started up there, right down the boulevard towards Big Tree and then carry that out through the business district. So just a suggestion. And then I was a little confused because you said there's basically no difference between conservancy and CR. So
Yeah.
why do we have two different districts then, if they're basically the same?
No, they're not the same.
Yeah, they are different. I was talking about one specific item within it, and that's slopes. And slopes are not different. You cannot build on a 25% slope in the conservancy, and you cannot build on a 25% slope outside of the conservancy. So I was saying there's no difference related to that topic.
That particular.
Topic, yeah,
That whole discussion was only about this.
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thought I heard it. Lost it. Thought there was apples and oranges.
Thanks, Jan.
Yeah. Then no topic, yeah. It did.
All right, yes, Greg.
Wait 1 second while I switch that. It's not the same.
Yeah, got a load mark on it.
It will suck down the two batteries ever faster. That's the.
Yeah.
And Greg Wozniak, 1773 Bar Avenue. Anyway, I just wanted to say one thing. Jim, a lot of times you say if something's 50%, over 50% needs rehab, that it can't be done. I don't think that's true. I think that it can be done under a variance. And I know you're saying a variance is very hard to get. You have to get a hardship or whatever. And land is a type of a hardship. So if one of those apartment buildings would suffer from some sort of land subsidence or whatever, even if it was beyond 50% of what had to be rehabbed on it, I believe that they wouldn't have any problem at all getting a variance for that. So I just want to kind of get rid of the 50% dead spot. You know what I mean? Like things can go beyond 50%. So
I would have to rely on.
just wanted to bring it up. Oh, if Mandy's on the line, she could tell us.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks.
Mandy, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I was just, bringing it up,
Okay.
the zoning ordinance, just to check what the specifics on that 50%. But as far as getting a variance, I know having a non-conforming lot itself is a unique characteristic, and that's one of the variance requirements. But you also have to show that it's the least variance required. It's not going to have any harmful impact on the neighborhood, that it's not just a personal preference of the property owner. So getting the variance is not guaranteed. And you do have to, it is a high burden and can be appealed by neighbors who don't agree with it.
Thanks, Mandy. Is there anyone attending virtually who has comment? I want to make sure that you don't get missed. Please raise your hand on Zoom if you have a comment. All right, anyone else in person? Yes, please.
Karen Tomchek, Park Street. I just wanted to make a comment about the baskets for the business areas. If you had considered the hanging baskets that would go on the poles, I don't think they would be nearly as expensive as these. They would require to be watered, the plants, but that would probably be it. And another question, I think I've attended all the meetings, but I was just wondering where we are with the 25-foot frontage on the properties on that zoning. And where are we with the whole zoning board that started about a year ago? How far is the planning zoning board, you know, get that to present it to the borough council. And that's it.
Thanks.
Hanging baskets really quick. Yes, great idea. We have absolutely talked about those and those are an absolute possibility.
And they take up less space
Yeah.
on the.
Yes, or they, yeah.
Right.
And then the 25-foot thing, I'll just keep talking while I have the mic, I guess. 25-foot thing was rejected by planning commission. So that is presently off the table. Yeah, totally off the table. And then the bigger question that Karen asked is, where are we at in the process and how long do we have to go before this goes to Borough Council? And that is entirely up to planning commission. When you're comfortable for a vote, we will take a vote.
And we do have someone online that's gonna ask, Cody wants to ask a question.
Sure.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, my appointment is only for a year, so we have to do it within a year. But more seriously, your comment about where are we? I think that's absolutely right. I met with, I pestered Jim and Mike 2 or 3 times, trying to just get up to speed as a new member. And one of the things I suggested that might be helpful, certainly for me and maybe you folks as well, and maybe my fellow planning commission members, is simply to have a quick sort of a score sheet, for lack of a better term. Mike and all his good efforts has put together various documents that if you have the time to read through, you can figure out about where the 25-foot thing is. But what I said is there a simple way of saying 25-foot issue, accepted or rejected? ADUs, accepted or rejected, and they were rejected. And so I was thinking maybe it would be helpful just to see that, because if my recollection from trying to background myself was an awful lot of issues have been already decided, but there seems to be continued confusion as to, from the public, as to which things were in fact accepted or rejected. So I just mentioned that I had made that suggestion. Mike said he thought he could produce such a simple document. It just might be helpful. So that's all. I just want to mention it.
Oh, whoops. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to have a timer on you.
And I'm hoping it's a lot sooner than later, because I think a lot of progress has been made. And I think a whole lot of people have spent a lot of energy. I mean, the audience is really what I mean, trying to make their point. And I hope, at least from what I heard just tonight, it's my first meeting. It seems like people have been responsive to the public, and I certainly hope so. But if that's the case, I would hope that this has a quick turnaround, and maybe even at the next meeting, I would hope. But that's up to others to decide, not me.
Good answer.
Yeah, I think it would be good to move forward with this process. I do feel like that sounds like a really great suggestion to have outlined the items that have been considered by the planning commission and whether they've been accepted or rejected, and whatever term we want to use. And I think having that circulated and included in a packet that either, within the next couple of months, we consider to pass this on to council is what I would like what I would prefer the timeline to be.
Does that mean longer?
I would be prone to count, if we could get a sort of finalized everything circulated with the changes that we made today, I guess to reflect, right? We took some votes today that we've talked about for a long time. We made some final decisions today, on Thomas Street, on the conservancy vote and those sort of things. So I think we're definitely at the point where a fully revised planning code being presented to us is definitely, that's where I'm at, and to consider, and then, to the next part of the process, which is to council.
Yeah, thank you. I would agree to do.
Sure.
No.
Someone online.
Yeah, I just know, Cody raised his virtual hand first. So yeah,
Okay.
please go ahead, Cody.
Cody, you should be able to talk now.
Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Jim, my question's for you. I came into the meeting kind of when we were or when you guys were discussing I think was the Linden Avenue plot, and I just wanted to clarify what you said about that. Were you saying that council wants us to leave or council's asking planning commission to leave the Linden parcel zoned as is, Was that, am I correct that that's what we were talking about?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. And does that have to do with their negotiation or, involvement with the school district?
Yes, but not because there's any ideas for any kind of plan. There's no
Sure.
plan. Just having conversations with the school district to determine how to move a process forward so that the community can be heard.
Right, totally understand that. Yep. Just wanted to clarify that. All right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thanks, Cody. Greg?
I'll take up my last 15 seconds.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that as far as moving this forward any quicker, this is about 130 some page document, maybe more. And we probably only touched like 30 pages of it, usage tables and a couple hot items. We've been fighting hot items for 9 months. So I think that thinking that we can get this thing done by next meeting is not even feasible. Like I said, it's a big document. We've been just looking at a very small portion of the document. There's a heck of a code.
If you want, I will pay for one game, like a learning game. Like
I wouldn't rush it. I'd make sure that what the community
Like we
wants.
only have one.
Well, I just heard we wanted a finalized thing by the end of the,
When did this start?
potentially.
We're on this for quite some time. I don't think it's fair to say we've only been talking about 30% of the code.
I think we have been.
So, yeah, let's just,
What I would say is the hot button issues are 30% of the code. So we have been talking about hot button issues for a majority of the last period of time. And we have listened and we have made quite a number of responses to all of those hot issues. Let me check and see, the most current issue of the code is
March 31st.
March 31st. So everybody has access to the full code as of March 31st, that's available. And so to go again, to look at it, to see where are the issues that we're concerned about, we should be able to look at that between now and the next meeting and see if there are any further issues, and if there are not, then begin to wrap it up. That's what I would say, offer as just a summary of where we are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just saying that for the last year and a half, the community has been focused on these hot items and coming back to you over and over again about, not you, but this whole code system or process has been, the community has been looking at only those hot items. There's a lot more in this code for the community to be looking at, but they've been dwelling on those hot items because of the way they've been presented. So I think it's only fair that once the community feels, and I agree with you, you guys are doing a really good job as in the community and in moving those things in that direction. But then there's a whole lot more code to look at other than
Everybody
those
has
hot items.
Over the next 30 days.
If
Right.
there are other items in the code that you
Right.
think that we should be
Bring them up.
considering, please pass
I
those
just-
along.
No, I'm not saying I have a
Yeah.
specific piece. I'm just saying that there's a big document here that the community has been probably concentrating on for a smaller piece of that document than the rest of the document. People haven't looked at signs. People haven't looked at fences. People haven't looked at other regulations of the code. They've been concentrating on things like what were AUDs, what were lot sizes, what were conversion apartments, things like that. The community had to continue to bring that back to the table over and over and over again because they weren't necessarily being listened to in the beginning. Now, what I'm saying is that it's great. We finally got the process going to where the community's input is starting to be looked at. That's a small, that's a part of the code. There's another very large section of the code that the community probably hasn't even looked at because they've been concentrating on these hot items. So what I'm saying is that I would give the community more than 30 days or whatever, or have them come back, but give them a chance to look at a lot of the other pieces of the code.
We have
That's all I'm
created a
asking.
document that outlines all of the changes that have been made in the code. Mike's made that and circulated that many months ago. We can recirculate that so that folks have another opportunity to look at the, side by side of what has changed, because you're right, it's a really dense document that is worth an easy to read way of approaching it. And we talked many months ago about there being, a document that outlines each of the changes. So we can circulate that again, but it is within that we have made a document that outlines all of the changes to the code. And then we took the hot button issues. But the full code and its changes has been in the public's hands for quite some time.
I know that. I know that.
Yeah.
I said that. I know.
I think it's clear, like, what I'm hearing, Greg, is you would like more time. That's your comment and you're addressing that. You want the planning commission to know that you feel that we should spend more time on it.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more to the code than just those hot items that we've been dwelling on. And let's educate. We've gone through how many public opinion or public meetings, and how many times did we talk only about hot items at those public meetings? We were never formally talked about other items of the code at a public meeting. Nothing was ever really brought forward to the public at these meetings. So it's the onus is on the borough to bring some of that information to the public and say, okay, here's the code, here's the hot items, just like Ellen was saying. Okay, let's just tick those off. Those are done. Now here's the rest of the code we have to talk about.
Thanks,
We
Greg.
haven't talked about.
Yeah, we'll make sure to
Just
publish the final draft and like recirculate a summary, Alan's idea about the score sheet, make it clear what's changed, what hasn't, other changes from, the current existing zoning code to what this proposed is, and, yeah.
right.
Thank
And it's
you.
an opportunity not only to look at changes, but an opportunity to write the code in a way that helps the borough, not just look at each individual change. So I'm just putting that out there, that there's a lot more to look at in this code than just the hot items that we've been dwelling on.
Thanks, Greg. All right, any other public comment before we adjourn here? All right, well, in that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All right,
My motion. to adjourn.
okay, any opposed? No, okay. Meeting adjourned at 8:04.